There we go. That's a little better. Cool.
You look pale.
I'm Cody from UnqualifiedGamers.com, and I just came from a movie showing called Gameloading, Rise of the Indies. And I went with Casey, who doesn't do video games. So I like
play them.
She doesn't play video games. She watches me play video games sometimes.
Inadvertently.
Probably against her will for the most part. But she is not a gamer, as it were. I am something of a gamer. Lately, just Hyrule Warriors, but that's neither here nor there. So Gameloading Rise of the Indies is a movie about indie gaming, and I was like, well, Casey has only seen me play Hyrule Warriors, which is a game which consists of, I mean, how would you describe that game?
It's triumphant music and explosions and skeletons and chickens there.
This is actually all really sadly true, if you've ever played Hyrule Warriors.
Are they good or are they evil?
It depends on the level. So there are chickens, but anyway, so this is her like experience for the most part with video games, and so I thought to myself, well, Gameloading Rise of the Indies, there's lots of indie games that have actual things worth watching, like interesting storylines and gameplay mechanics and things like that. So I was like, well, I'll take Casey and we'll see how it is. So here's your review of Gameloading Rise of the Indies from both a guy who plays video games and someone who does not so much. So what did you think of the movie?
Well, I liked it. I thought it was a good introduction to kind of marginal artistic world, you know, of people who are doing things for fun and because they like the art and they like the challenge, and it's not about making money. And they were specifically, from the beginning, and I think very consistently, they avoided games that had to do with violence or conflict. So all of the ones that they showed were more about a certain experience or an adventure or a commentary that could be connected to real life. So they tried to, like, from the beginning, get rid of certain common stereotypes. One, that they're all about like violence and explosions, or like Hyrule Warriors,
right,
or whatever it's called.
Maybe. And
two, that that is not escapism. That was a big one that they kind of dispelled at the beginning. That escapism is maybe when you're a kid, but then after that, it's supposed to be like more more provocative, or more stimulating, or make you perceive the world in a different way, or make you able to deal with things that happen in your real life in a different way. So games about depression, games about the society controlling you, games about how to touch and interact with tactile sensorial stimulation, games about the loss of a child. Like there was a kind of a broad range of tropes that could be kind of integrated with games. So that seemed to be what they were going for, and I thought that was eye-opening from like an outsider's perspective. And then they kind of followed like a certain group of gamers, like the gamer or indie gaming community, through different levels of the creation process, and what it's like to market it, and what it's like to be received, and why they do it, and how they interact with each other.
Well, to be fair, the part about I mean, they touch on what it's like to market it, but that was a more minimal part of it.
It still seemed long.
And one that we
still seemed maximal.
One that we did not necessarily like.
Yeah.
Totally interested. So we talked about the film a bit after we watched it. And I thought it was good.
Yeah. In a word, I liked it.
Yeah. So we both.
Was that what you were going for?
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, originally, but you know, then you told actual details, which is nice. But no, so we both liked it, which is good. From a certain standpoint,
I just think that I liked it as an introductory thing.
Yeah,
that was, I guess, my legitimization of my liking.
Yeah, it was interesting to me because like there's a lot that I was aware of, right? So like at the start of actually throughout the movie, they spin a thread where they're following the creator of the Stanley Parable, which is a great game that John and I have reviewed on UnqualifiedGamers.com. If you search for Stanley Parable. So I was familiar with that game and kind of the process and the Kickstarter behind it. Maybe there wasn't a Kickstarter. Thinking of something else. It doesn't matter. But a couple of the games I was very familiar with and kind of knew. And I guess I don't know what I wanted from the movie. I've seen, like I watched The Smash Brothers, which is a documentary about pro Smash Brothers players. and that competitive scene, and it follows
the
King of Kong, right? Also about competitive gamers, which is like super interesting because it's about the people. It's a story about the people, really, in the culture, which is like super cool. But then like game loading, it followed some people, and some of the people were kind of interesting, but there were no like home run like wow, this is a character people. I mean, there were some that were more interesting than others, and there were certain dynamics.
Oh, you mean what we saw this evening?
Yeah, this evening.
Well, they were trying to. They kept repeating the word community, so I think they were really trying to give a panoramic thing, and so to balance, like, here's this whole world that's interconnected. It's global or Western and comprises all of Europe and all of the U.S.
Yeah.
But they also had to create characters that they could follow, otherwise you would just be lost.
Right.
So I think that's the balance that they were trying to strike, and that's one of the. Maybe the drawbacks, because like King of Kong, it's two guys, and basically it's basically two guys and they're enemies.
Well, so I haven't watched as many documentaries as you probably have, but like
you've watched more video game documentaries than
I have, but I have watched other documentaries. Have you seen Man on Wire?
No.
It's like about a guy that tight ropes between the two towers of the World Trade Center.
Oh yeah, I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, it's like the most amazing story on Earth. A guy breaks into the World Trade Center and tight rope walks across the tallest buildings on the Earth. Like, why? Like, who does that? Like, think about the person that does that. So, like, this movie's about...
Like the Jules Verne one that I saw.
Yes. And so, like, the documentary's about what he did and, like, stuff, but it's about him and his character.
Right.
And, like, the Smash Brothers documentary. It follows, like, PC Chris and Ken and follows these specific narratives. And then the King of Kong is, like, Billy Mitchell, the guy with the crazy tie that, like, is weird and crooked and you know, antagonistic towards these guys. So... most of the documentary and like the documentary about the NSA that I saw, you haven't seen it, but it's not the Edward Snowden one, but the one about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. That documentary is more about kind of Julian Assange and his like contacts and what they've done, and more about their character. Like, I feel a lot of documentaries at their heart, like the really good ones, are traditionally a narrative of people.
But we're talking in this particular case about a particular kind of person who is an artist, supposedly, who creates things. And so that presents the dilemma, right? Do we talk about what it is that they create? Because that's what makes them interesting. Because if not, they're dudes who sit in front of a screen. That's really what they're doing.
That's true.
They're not having it. I mean, they do have adventures and they go to airports and fly from point A to point B. But they're dudes in front of the screen. What makes them interesting is what they create. And so, do we focus on the creation or do we focus on the people? I found unilaterally the creations more interesting than the people, except for the eccentric little guy from Belgium who had exquisite fingernails and his manicurist is.
I don't remember him.
Yes, you do.
Was he part of the couple or
the couple? He had little mustaches.
Oh, the mustache guy.
Nails,
yeah,
but
yes.
he had these nails. Like he was.
I don't remember the nails. I remember the parted hair in the middle and the weird mustache.
He had an amazing manicure. I don't know. He was just he was a persona. Like that man had.
Yes.
He had a theatrical identity.
Yes. There were some eccentric characters for sure. So Casey was attracted to like learning about some of the games, like Stanley Parable. She has not seen me play that or played that herself. We're going to do that soon. But like every time they showed a clip from it, she started laughing, and she's like, "That looks like a really cool thing, a really fun thing." And but then Papers, Please gets mentioned, and they show like 2 seconds of that, and then it goes away forever.
Yeah.
And Papers, Please, to me, like you could tell a whole story about that. I mean, you could probably spend a half hour talking about any of the games in the film, and they had like 200 hours of footage.
So they had to make decisions.
They had to make decisions, but I think. What I'm trying to get at with the whole narrative of the people thing is, and I did really like the story of the guy that did the Stanley Parable, because at the end, like, it's very triumphant, and he, like, 4 years of work paid off, and it's, like, really cool. That was a really cool thread that they weaved through the entire thing. But a lot of the other people, I think, maybe would have rather seen focus on the games they were creating than them themselves. But... I don't know. I'm nitpicking, really. This is like becoming a very
no. It was good. It was good. It was a great introduction, and I think also for maybe people who play video games, it's cool to know what else is out there. and test certain limits.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get at was, who is this movie for, with all the kind of weird tangenting and like sidelining and like, and for me, being a guy that's more familiar with the source material and having played some of these games and knowing about most of them, to me it wasn't eye-opening in any particular way, and there was no like entertainment, like pure entertainment aspect of hearing a narrative of like the crazy person.
What you're saying,
you know what I'm saying? So for me, I wasn't compelled by the people in it, which is okay. It doesn't need to be. But then on top of that, I was also pretty familiar with a lot of the content, so not a lot was eye-opening for me. Now for Casey, like, she wasn't familiar with the games or really like a lot of it. So she's like learning all these things and seeing glimpses of the games. And the people don't matter quite as much because she sees a clip from the Stanley Parable and it's like, oh my god, that's in a video game?
Some of the people were, you know, it was some of them were characters and stuff, but none of them were enough to drive interest for 92 minutes.
Yes, is what I would say. So that actually...
Well, it's like the thing, like, what is, you know, whatever the Aristotelian notion of, like, what is, like, art supposed to do? It's supposed to, like... Well, there's really 3 things, but, like, 2 of them of what we usually do is, like, educate and entertain. And, like, if you're not necessarily educated because you already knew about it, you have to be entertained. Whereas I could place more onus on the educational part, and so I could give them more leeway with the entertainment.
What's the third part?
Sector. To move you sentimentally. That would be the third one.
We both got a little bit of that.
Well, there were,
You did with that Dragon Cancer.
Yeah, that was moving, and that one I think they handled really tastefully, and there was a lot of it felt like like watching trailers or something where there's these teasers, and it did make you want to like learn more and find out more like about that one. Like they didn't do any spoilers, I don't think. They were really careful with that.
I would agree with that.
Like they really wanted to pull you in.
Yeah.
Which is one of the problems. It was super like promotional. Like, this is great. Don't you think this is great? Isn't this charming in every way?
She thought it was too pro-indie.
It was a little like a commercial sometimes.
Which is
fine.
But
they need commercials apparently because they hate marketing.
Right. Okay, so after they talk about the creation process, there is like a 10 or 15 minute segment where they talk about how the cream doesn't always rise to the top, right? Like basically that a lot of indie games are which is a good analogy.
Yeah, I know, but sometimes it also sounds like disturbing to me for some reason too. I don't know why.
I don't get that. But the apparently not a coffee drinker or
cream drinker.
I don't know.
For you.
That's really gross. But in terms of like what they're saying basically is like not all the best games become the most popular, most best-selling games because
capitalism is not democratic. Is what they're implying.
Because they're not marketed very well.
But they didn't say that because that would cause socialism.
Well, yes, that would cause socialism. But okay, so I know this because I'm in marketing. She knows this because she works in marketing and is very culturally aware of these sorts of things. So that particular segment.
I know this because I know you.
Yeah, that particular 10-ish minute segment of the film was particularly uninteresting to us and kind of dragged near the 70th minute possibly. Everything before and after that is wonderful, and that part isn't poorly done. It's just kind of like I made a video one time a couple weeks ago. I made a video on basic tenets of capitalism. If you buy something and resell it for more money, you make profit. This seems really obvious to a lot of people, and probably much of our audience because they're pretty well educated in general. But there are people out there that just don't get it. They're just like, oh, why would someone buy something and try and sell it for more money? Who does that? Well, that's like how America works. So in that vein, perhaps like some people don't know anything about a lot of like marketing related stuff, and they look at it and they're like, why aren't all these indie games super popular?
They must be bad because they're not available.
Right, they must be bad. So maybe like this was good for them particularly, but to us it was, I guess, the weak point in the movie. And no movie is perfect, and every movie is going to have a little weak point. But that's why we keep bringing that up. But it's not a substantial portion of it.
No, but it's one of the things, like, I think it's a really good movie in that it opens up further lines of inquiry. There are movies that leave you with nothing to say. Like, that would be much worse. This one, I think, leaves lots to be said. You know? So it's not, there are things that are not worth critiquing.
That's accurate.
There are things that are really not. And this is good enough that it has, you know, points worth critiquing.
Yeah.
Which I think is always a compliment.
Yeah.
Otherwise we just talk about something else.
So that
Like
was
this dragon.
that whole.
Which can you see? Yeah, you can't
The
see
dragon's kind of in the corner. You can't really
No.
see it in this.
And
There's a
you can't
dragon
see-
behind me, but
Like this experimental, this neo-expressionist. Yeah.
well, I was talking about something before we got on the tangent of that dragon cancer. So, well, she was emotionally
Being
moved
moved
by that dragon cancer. I was emotionally a bit moved when they want the Stanley Parable, like when they're in the guy's house the day it launches on Steam. It becomes number 6 or number 4 on the Steam Marketplace. Destructoid gives it a 10 out of 10. And Rock Paper Shotgun writes a review of the game in the style of the Stanley Parable the day it comes out. So like kind of a choose your own adventure
Which
kind
is
of
really
review.
impressive because how long would he have had to write that review? Like
I
they
know.
posted it and then 10 minutes. Well, I guess they had to cut stuff.
They probably played the demo too, or gotten like a
Yeah.
fast copy or something.
But there were people I think on the edge of their seats for a while for that one too.
Yeah.
So that's the impression I got, that people were really like waiting with arms open. For
Yeah,
that to come.
I mean, when they got the 10 out of 10 on Destructoid, I mean, the guy just loses it, and I got, like, it's effective.
That was
effective.
moving. It was very authentic. Like,
It was
I think
very
they had
genuine.
Unfiltered, like the sense of creation and what it's like to create something just for the pleasure of it without making money, and they weren't totally over. There was something nice about success, like with my Belgian friend with the nails. Success is a stupid concept. And I kind of, I mean, he's also living very comfortably in Belgium, so maybe it's easier to say that.
Could be. What was I talking about before?
Being moved. Well, we talked about the dragon cancer.
Before that, yeah, but then there was
and
something
then,
before the being moved deal. It doesn't matter.
Well, because you said that you weren't as entertained by the narrative.
Right, okay, yes, getting back to that, which I'm sure at some point I have some other idea.
4.5 steps ago.
These are wristbands that we're wearing, by the way. It says Lincoln Hall. We saw this at Lincoln Hall on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago. They had this screening, which was quite nice. I really enjoyed the venue.
Beautiful.
Quite a bit. So if you're ever in Chicago, see a show at Lincoln Hall. We should really get paid for that, but we're not going to, so there's that. Yes.
But we don't place stock in the notion of success.
Nope, never.
So it's not important that we get paid for it.
So, anyway, it was a good movie. We both enjoyed it. If you are really...
Did you say the title of the movie?
Yeah, Gameloading, Rise of the Indies.
Okay.
So yeah, this is my first rodeo.
I don't remember you saying the title at all.
Oh, well,
Okay.
We've just gone over
I
so
needed
much...
you to remind me of the title.
We've just gone over so much content. It was a good movie. We both enjoyed it. Coming from both a gamer and a non-gamer, I think that if you're not,
but not anti-gamer necessarily.
Right. If you're an anti-gamer, I'm not sure you would enjoy it.
No, that's well.
It's a different story altogether.
It's a different story altogether.
I would say that if you're very familiar with indie games and you already know a lot about these, it's not going to be the best movie you've ever seen. Like my co-host on this podcast, John Martin, I don't think this will like change his life, but I think he can watch it with his wife, perhaps, and
their small child.
And their small child, their 1-year-old child.
It's family friendly. There was nothing inappropriate. There was like no violence and no sex.
There's 2 swears. Drop a couple F-bombs. Cutting edge. Very cutting edge.
Yeah.
So, but she can watch it and enjoy it and learn about it and see some cool things she's definitely never seen before. And be like, oh, that's really cool. Okay, fantastic. And I think John will be like moderately entertained by it. Because again, there's always little chuckle-worthy moments here and there, but there's no like overwhelming Billy Mitchell or PC Chris or Sephiroth Ken or strong, like you watch this person and that's a character.
There's no bad guys, and so that makes it.
And there are no bad guys.
Again, that relates to the problem of it being promotional.
Yeah.
There's no one really bad.
There's really no antagonism, kind of at all, really.
It's kind of very Burning Man culture too. Like it's this sort of virtual hippie bohemianism where it gives a little romantic portrait of this community that they repeat so frequently, and they don't the enemy of that community would be something like the system or something, and it's very abstract if it's mentioned at all, or depression or whatever. These sort of nameless amorphous foes. And so it doesn't have like a good here's a person who's kind of an asshole. Yeah. I think it needed at least one asshole. Can you say
Yeah,
that?
probably. Yeah, we can. Yes,
okay.
we can.
Sorry, I
YouTube,
forgot about that.
No, I think you. Yeah, I would maybe agree. And I think the documentary, the guys that did this did a great job. There's two very, very likable Australians made this. A guy and a girl. And they came out on stage and did a little Q&A afterwards. And I don't even know how to describe them other than just absolutely lovable.
Yeah.
Like, they were just very, like, just likable. Just two people you just want to, like, be pals with, really. And they seemed really friendly. They did a ton of work on this movie. Got, like, 200 hours of footage.
It was definitely labor of love. It was not made for other motives. It was because they wanted to do it, and they loved doing it.
Yeah,
and you could tell.
And I would say that any criticism, you know, that I have of the movie isn't of the way that they crafted the film, because I think they did a great job. I think it's more that they just there just was nobody in this indie gaming community that they came across who filled a role of a super compelling character that would have made it easy to follow them in a narrative form. I think they got the Stanley Parable guy, and that was kind of the strongest character they had, and they followed him, and they did a phenomenal job of that. But there was no crazy Billy Mitchell. There was no crazy indie gamer that wanted to take over the world or, like, go, you know, work for Nintendo after he's made 20 indie games, or just do something crazy, or...
They're all really sane, actually. I'm sure there are more insane people in this community. Like, There have to be. It has to be full of crazy people. Like, they don't necessarily need to be bad, but, like, someone who's a little bit
maybe,
more
again,
crazy.
everybody was eccentric a bit, but yeah, just saying, that's...
Well, I don't know. I mean, the one girl who did, which one was her game? The one in pink that had the triangle.
She was an interesting character.
She was pretty fun.
Again, they were all interesting, but there was no, like...
It was a superficial take, though, yeah.
Yeah, there was no, like, super compelling, like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of relative. What I'm generally saying is I just thought that, again, the characters may not carry a 90-minute, 100-minute movie or whatever, but the games, they focused on enough to certainly keep many people entertained. So I would say go see it if you want to check out indie games. And at the end, somebody asked the director, like, what made you want to make this? And the guy said at one point, he said, well, I have a friend, I used to study film, and then I have a friend he studied film. I got him mixed up with somebody in the documentary. But he's like, oh, I study film, and I have a friend that studies film, and he thinks video games are just stupid. And he's just like, for people to kill each other, and they're just like, totally zone out, and they're pointless or whatever. And part of me wanted to really show him, like, games can be good, and games can be interesting, and games can be whatever. And she looked, like, right at me.
And that's why I was brought to this event.
Yeah, and she looked right at me, and she was like, hey, that sounds familiar. So, and I was like, well, did he do
I never said it so unilaterally.
Right. Well, and so I'm like, well, did it do the trick? And she was like, well, yeah, I was, you know, she's now, I mean, you said it, so I don't have to say it like you're not here. You said that you're, it like opened your eyes.
Yeah, so like just seeing what else is out there, these marginal kind of art forms, these fringe art forms that are conceptually fascinating, like, and just very, very simple. Like one where you just hum into a machine and then it creates a sort of vortex, a colorful vortex based on your humming that duplicates a kind of advanced drug state or an advanced meditative state. Like, to what extent that's even in game, I don't know, but as an experience, that seemed to me to be like, people have always looked for some sort of out of body sort of, you know, transcendental thing, and that you could be provided that without the hangover. Yeah. Without 10 years in India,
yeah,
is
drugs.
Yeah, even in just like kind of a superficial way, like it just as a little brief journey is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that I thought was amazing.
So Gameloading Rise of the Indies, we don't do like ratings on the podcast or whatever, but.
Don't we?
Did you have a rating, or are you waiting for it?
No, I liked it. I would. You recommend seeing it, or recommend not seeing it, I suppose.
Well, it depends on the thing that we do at Unqualified Gamers is we John and I generally focus on who would like something.
Oh, right.
Like Hyrule Warriors, you're not going to like if you like indie games, basically, because they're kind of opposites.
Yeah.
That's
so. Not any of the people that you've been talking to for the last 18 episodes will not want to see this.
So what I'm saying is, and I've already said it, but just to reiterate, first of all, directors of the movie, if you're watching, yeah, actually, great job. Thank you. You did accomplish your goal. You did accomplish your goal of showing someone the light, kind of, and then
sorry, it was like I was just.
She was like covered in darkness before. Yeah, she wasn't aware the games
living in the dark ages, so, where I thought everything was Hyrule World.
But yeah,
the dark ages that is your living room.
But you accomplished your goal. I don't know what you're talking about. You accomplished your goal, so great job, and it was really good. I would recommend it to most people. I would say again, John and I have especially John has a particular interest in indie games. If you kind of have been there, done that, and you know a lot about them, this probably won't teach you a ton of newness. Unless you're really interested in becoming like a creator of these games, like wanting to be a game developer, in which case like maybe it'll give you some insights as well. I think it hits a couple different target audiences. So for that reason, you know, again, if you're a developer yourself, and you know all these games and stuff, I don't know.
Anyone who's interested in, I think, in just like new media opening up and new art forms and what's out there, like even if you have zero pros, or even if you're just totally neutral on the topic of video games, like, because for me it wasn't even about the gaming per se, it was about a new way of thinking about art and a new way of thinking about media and what possibilities it opens up and what people are doing with it, and that could be lots of people. That could be academics. It could be anyone.
That's true.
Anyone who likes make-believe worlds.
That's
so hopefully
true.
that's most of you.
Hopefully. If you're watching this, you probably do. Yeah, actually, yeah, academics, I would say...
I mean, not that I would ever talk to an academic.
No, of course not. No, I was looking at it through a very gamer-centric lens. Yeah. So this is why I brought in an actual unqualified... You're not even a gamer. You're not even qualified to call yourself an unqualified gamer.
Wow. Like, profoundly unqualified.
Right.
I've reached new heights of unqualification.
Or new depths.
Or depths.
If you will.
I prefer heights.
Well...
It seems to be positive. You guys are appropriating it, right?
I guess.
Like, it's secretly, actually, that you're more qualified. You just be... What makes you more...
Don't tell our secret. Stop it. Damn it. You're going to ruin everything for us. It's our brand. I'm just going to end it there.
Cheers.